Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us for this session. So my name's Nik Lomax. I'm one of the co-directors of the CDRC here at Leeds. And this is a session very much focused on the various ways in which you can engage with the CDRC. So it's a theme session around capacity building and impact through partnerships. So we're going to take the form of a question and answer session. I've got 4 panel members to introduce to you in just a few minutes. And I'm going to ask them some questions about their work engaging with the CDRC. So within CDRC, we quite often refer to something that we call the ladder of engagement when we talk about the routes to engagement. So some of the rungs of that ladder are attending training via our short course training program. There are various options around funding for internships. So we have a very successful internship program that engages with partner organisations, and we'll hear a lot more about those in a minute. You can put forward a project as part of the master's dissertation scheme, which engages with partners through the master's program. There are options around PhD sponsorship, either through our Centre for Doctoral Training or on a kind of bilateral basis. There is partnership through short projects. There is sharing of data sets, and you'll see that there are quite a lot of examples of that via the CDRC data store. And then there are options all the way up through kind of longer term projects, multi-level partnerships. So that's a very high level view of what is possible. There is good detail on our website, cdrc.ac.uk, about those various routes to partnership. But hopefully it will all become a little bit clearer after some of the Q&A session that we're going to have today. So our 4 speakers on the panel each represent different rungs of that ladder. So we're going to talk to 2 of our former interns and also 2 of our former PhD students as well. Now, just before I introduce our panelists, I thought it might be quite useful to give you a very brief example of the kind of this engagement through partnerships. So one of our partners, Sainsbury's, had a presence at the COP26, which included 2 talks and a physical booth, a stand, which focused on the Eat Well guide. So the talks were centered around helping everybody eat better and measuring what matters. Now, the environmental and sustainable commitments that Sainsbury's made as part of COP26 wouldn't have been possible without understanding how their customers shopped and what can motivate them to shop differently. So part of their plan for better, they looked at healthy sales and better for you sales, which was research undertaken in collaboration with the CDRC and the Leeds Institute for Data Analytics, which they within Sainsbury's then built upon. So the research conducted jointly by CDRC and Sainsbury's nutrition team presented at the Nutrition Society conference in Dublin, and we're expecting to see a full paper on that following later on in the year. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel for the ways in which the kind of collaboration can work going forwards. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our 4 panelists. So first up, we'll have Alex Dalton. Alex is a former CDRC affiliated intern and now CDRC data scientist at the University of Leeds. Welcome to Vicki Jenneson. Vicki was a PhD student on our Data Analytics and Society PhD and is now a CDRC Research Associate. Welcome to Simon Leech. Simon was another of our data science interns and now is a data analyst and developer at Geolytics. And welcome to Fran Pontin as well. So Fran was a PhD student on our CDT Data Analytics and Society and now is a CDRC data scientist. So thank you all very much for joining us and welcome. So if we go in turn, I'm going to say hello to Vicki first. Vicki, hi, thanks very much for being here.
Hi, Nick.
You worked with the CDRC for 3 years during your master's and then your PhD. Can you tell us a bit about your background and your PhD project? And also be interested to know how important it's been to collaborate with partners in your work.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, my background is in nutrition and public health, and I'd worked a little bit before starting my PhD, so both in the food industry and the charity sector, and then went on to do a master's in public health at the University of York, And I suppose that's where I really sparked my interest in research and what made me apply for the CDT programme. And that programme was particularly great for me because I didn't really know anything about computers or data and couldn't write a single line of code before I started. So I gained a huge amount of skill on that master's programme, which I've then applied throughout my PhD. And my PhD was in partnership with a large national supermarket, and looked at how we can use their loyalty card transaction data to monitor diet at the population level. So that collaboration was really important, not just for getting access to the data, but for also working together to come up with a research plan that actually brought value to both sides of the partnership. So I think for me, it really helped that I'd worked in the food industry before, because it meant that we could speak the same language on a lot of things. And I already had some awareness of food regulations and some of the challenges faced in product development, coming up with products that are both healthy and tasty. So I think that helped me to understand not only the business's priorities, but also the origins of some of the data I was working with too. And so mainly on that partnership, I've collaborated with the nutrition team, who have been so supportive throughout and even begun to think of me as an extension of their team, which is brilliant. But I've also collaborated with lots of teams across the business, so consumer insights, marketing, data governance, information security. So I learned loads about how the business operates, and it's been a real team effort on both sides of the partnership. And that's ultimately what's contributed to its success, I think.
Great. And you also undertook a secondment with Defra. So can you tell us a bit more about that secondment? So what was it like? And what sort of skills and expertise did you offer the team there at Defra?
Yeah, so I did. My experience with Defra was brilliant, and I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity actually if it hadn't have been for the remote working environment that we find ourselves in. And that all came about off the back of my master's dissertation. So I've been working with the transactions data for a little while and had got quite familiar with the nutrition information that's available for each product. So when I saw the government's consultation on using the nutrient profile model as a way to restrict promotions of products high in saturated fat, salt and sugar, I immediately saw a challenge for industry around the scale up and accuracy of that data, given that they don't routinely hold all of that information needed to generate the nutrient profile model score. So I'd published a couple of papers looking at how to automate that scale up of the nutrient profile model, and interviewed some of my industry contacts around the challenges and what they might need to support the implementation of that legislation. So then, with help from colleagues at the CDRC and policy leads, we were able to translate those findings into a policy brief, which allowed the research to reach a wider audience and eventually got in front of the team at Defra that were working on the National Food Strategy. And they at the time were exploring various different options for food industry legislation, and were interested in my findings and how they could avoid some of the potential pitfalls that I've raised in my work. So we got talking and realised that I had the data science skills that they needed at the time to work on a project modelling some of the implications for their potential policy proposals. So they brought me on board for 4 months, and I worked mainly on a piece of evaluation for the strategy's headline recommendation around introducing a salt and sugar tax. So that time I learned so much about how the policy world works and how we as researchers can interact with it. And I think the experience made me even more determined really to generate impact through my research. And I feel quite excited by the feeling of momentum and willingness across different sectors to work together, share data, and solve society's big problems around health and sustainability in particular, because I think it's really that aligned approach that we need to achieve impact for the public.
Excellent. Thank you, Vicki. And just to say to our audience, I should have said at the beginning, but please do post your questions in the chat for our panelists, and we'll hopefully visit some of those later on in the session. So turn to Alex. Hello, Alex. Thanks for joining us. So you were one of last year's cohort of the CDRC data science interns. Can you tell us a bit about the internship and how it led to the project that you're currently working on with Leeds City Council?
Yes, so yeah, I was fortunate enough to be a CDRC data science intern last year, where I was in a cohort of 11, enrolled on the Leeds Institute for Data Analytics' Data Science Internship Programme, which in which sort of you drive 2 6-month projects using data science techniques to harness the power of real-world data for public good. And specifically with that focus of public good, it's something that's so unique about the internship and something that I found really inspiring throughout. So for my second project, I worked on a new CDRC partnership at the time with social impact organisation, the Institute of Grocery Distribution, and as such worked really closely with leading UK retailers and manufacturers. The internship equipped me really well with basically just invaluable knowledge and insight, essentially into the trials and tribulations working with real world data. And it really consolidated for me the best ways to approach a data science project to actuate real world impact in quite a short time scale. And especially made me realise the benefits of working really closely with an external partner to achieve this. The experience working with then academics, policymakers and retailers taught me so much about the best practices and the ways of working to effectively communicate analysis to a variety of audiences and stakeholders as well, which is something I feel is really important to successful research projects and to enable long-lasting impact. These best practices when approaching a project definitely then benefited my current work with Leeds City Council, from the real impact and engagement being produced in the 6-month internship. We saw an opportunity for a further short-term rapid response, quite impactful project again, and essentially which is what led us to the partnership with Leeds City Council, which is in fact a 3-month project spread over 6 months. Our aim with this project is to evaluate the carbon footprint of school meals in Leeds and raise awareness of the way in which our food system contributes to climate change. To achieve this, we're developing a carbon footprint calculator, which is a decision-making tool in the form of an interactive dashboard. And throughout my research, basically with ICGD and LCC, I've just really come to appreciate sort of the nature of the CDRC partnerships. And as I've really found that through that close collaboration, we've been able to address any issues as they arose in the projects and interpret the insights made possible through consumer data as well.
Great. It sounds like that's a tool that needs to be developed at pace within a specific time frame in co-production with Leeds City Council. So what sort of challenges has that presented in terms of kind of project management? And also I'm interested to know what benefits you think Leeds City Council will get from the project in the longer term.
Yeah, so to develop the tool at pace, we set some really clear and achievable deliverables at the beginning of the project. It's a project that we all see a lot of potential to within the city, but the reason that I feel it's been such a success is by really focusing on quite a specific first application as school meals to develop a beta version, which could then be refined following feedback of its use as we see it in action. As I previously mentioned, it's a 3-month project spanning 6 months. Well, we set it up in this way so that once the prototype version was developed, we could then build on engagement whilst the tool's being used to extend its reach as well. Something that then is quite fundamental to the success within the time frame is that the data was set up to be available as soon as the project started, and we could really hit the ground running. Then, as you mentioned, it's in co-production with Leeds City Council. And so to manage project expectations, we set up quite clear ways of working that were really good at the beginning of the project in form of bi-weekly check-ins. And then we've continued to have excellent communication with their team at the council as the project's progressed, meaning we could quickly be put in touch with the right people at every stage. For example, when looking to troubleshoot the tool, or with catering, we were put in touch with them when looking at the school menus at the beginning. So something that I feel has really helped overcome any challenges and kept up that pace, as well as having those sort of shared values and goals for the project, because that's why we've been able to just really quickly be connected with the right people, and it's really only gone from strength to strength. Then thinking about the ways that this project will benefit Leeds City Council, well, It was developed as research intending to lend to Leicester Council's net zero journey, aiming not only to evaluate the carbon footprint of food in council-run food venues to raise awareness, but also of the sort of impact of our food, but also it's to provide the council with knowledge to guide their efforts to reduce it as well. So working with them really closely has enabled our project to have some real long-lasting impact, as not only will we equip them with a decision-making tool, but we've also been able to build and refine it throughout when studying it in action to develop a final sort of future-proofed version, allowing for any further application. Working closely with them, it's also enabled us to set up engagement events, organising workshops in schools to translate the insights from the tool into an accessible, interactive game, meaning that the schools are able to benefit from the research too, looking to motivate behaviour change and make children also more receptive to any system changes by the council and catering services. And being able to evidence essentially the success and impact of this rapid response project in that short time has generated a real appetite around this work as well, which has been quite pleasing to see and inspired quite a lot of engagement as a result. So from that real momentum behind the project, we've connected with numerous organisations in Leeds all interested in it and its potential, which is really furthering the research's longevity and the ways in which it can benefit the city as part of their net zero journey.
That sounds excellent. Thanks, Alex. Just before I turn to Simon, just to mention to the audience again, there are lots of projects and information that our speakers are talking through. There are some links in their bios, which are on the main website here. So there are some links out if you would like to know any more about some of these projects. So Simon, turning to you now, hi, and thanks for joining us. So like Alex, you were one of last year's CDRC data science interns. So can you tell us a bit about the local data spaces project that you were involved in? So I'm kind of thinking, what was the need for the project? Who were the partners? And crucially, what did you achieve?
Yeah, so as a CDRC data science intern, I was part of the local data spaces project, which, as Alex mentioned earlier, was closely aligned to the internship's core mission statement of data science for public good. So myself and 3 other CDRC affiliated researchers based at the University of Leeds, Liverpool and UCL joined this project as a team that could quickly be established due to the links that the CDRC had as a kind of cross-disciplinary experience team. And the Local Data Spaces project was a 6-month rapid response that aimed to understand local COVID-19 outcomes and recovery. So we used data from the National Test and Trace programme and COVID-19 infection survey, amongst other sources of data, to co-produce reports to understand the spread of the pandemic at local authority level and its impact on these areas. So this project was necessary as the local authorities needed to be provided with the most up-to-date information on COVID-19 and the economic recovery to help inform any local policy decisions they might create. The reports we developed were in response to ongoing challenges faced by local decision makers, and our initial engagement with 25 pilot local authorities was instrumental in our understanding and the co-production of this research. Now, we completed this research using the ONS's Secure Research Service, which is a virtual platform used for highly sensitive data, in which the users have to be certified and outputs have to be checked for statistical disclosure issues. And I was able to access this research service via the CDRC's safe rooms, which are basically small locked offices designed for secured access to this sensitive data. And the work was conducted in partnership with the Administrative Data Research UK, the Joint Biosecurity Centre, CDRC, and the ONS. So in terms of what we achieved, we co-produced 10 short reports broadly across 2 themes, economics and health, for all local authorities in England. These were made publicly available alongside the open source methodology and code we produced, which allowed other analysts the ability to extend and replicate our work should they wish to do so. And the project won the ONS's 2021 Project Award for Research Excellence, in which the Local Data Spaces was praised for its collaborative approach to working with local authorities to co-produce this timely evidence.
That's excellent. It's good to hear that there was recognition for the project, Simon. You mentioned quite a lot of partners there, so ADR UK, ONS, Joint Biosecurity Centre, local authorities. So I'm interested to know what it was like working across a national initiative that had lots of different stakeholders.
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting part of the project for me personally. When we started, local authorities mentioned to us that they were in what we called firefighting mode. So they were kind of gathering up whatever information they could, and they didn't have time to complete any additional analysis. So by working with a range of local authorities nationally as part of the pilot, we were able to highlight common research trends, and from this produce reports that were beneficial to other stakeholders beyond the original consultees. And this allowed us to do the work the local authorities mentioned they didn't have the time, analytical capacity, or resources to complete. So I think in such a short 6-month time span, to go from these initial conversations with the 25 local authorities right through to the production of 10 co-design reports for every local authority was something we were all quite proud of and was highly rewarding. And the project also gave us the opportunity to deliver some real-world impact, with my fellow researchers conducting some analysis in Liverpool that delivered key policy intervention in the location of COVID-19 testing sites, and also understanding how best to engage communities with low testing uptake. And some work was also submitted to SAGE on gender inequalities in COVID-19. And further to this, the co-production of these reports that I mentioned were made publicly available via the Geodata Pack section of the CDRC website. And these data packs were downloaded over 800 times between May and December, with the primary interest from academic and local governments, suggesting that our work was making it to the right people and having an impact. Personally, for me, the opportunity to work on such an impactful and highly rewarding project was fantastic. So I really developed my coding skills, as working within the Secure Research Service, there's no access to the internet or external resources, so you're really on your own. But that was a benefit to me to kind of develop that way. And I was able to work with expert academics, governmental organisations, and multiple stakeholders to co-design high-quality analyses and collaborate across a range of different organisations.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. So turning to Fran now. Hello, Fran. So like Vicki, you were a PhD student on the CDT, and you also devised a 2-day Python training course for the CDRC as part of its broader training portfolio. So I was hoping you'd be able to tell us a bit more about your PhD project, and then also about the benefits of the course that you created for the CDRC. And then the final part of that question is if you could maybe reflect on the what's unique about the broader training offer that the CDRC has.
Thanks, Nick. So yes, I was approached to run the 2-day Python training course during my PhD, which looked at using consumer app data held by the CDRC to investigate the social, spatial, and temporal determinants of physical activity behaviour. So this is using secondary app data that was originally commercially available, people downloading the app onto their phones, tracking their activity. We use this data in an anonymised form to look at trends and patterns in activity behaviour. So conducting this project sat me between the kind of fields of geography, medicine, and technology. So kind of embodying that real cross-discipline nature of the CDRC and put me in a good position to identify the specific needs of researchers across many disciplines and backgrounds when developing that Python training, especially when looking to work with consumer data. I therefore designed the Python course, condensing these skills developed during my PhD to reflect the steps someone looking to use these new and emerging forms of data would need to take. So from reading in the data pre-processing and cleaning. I think it's come up in quite a few talks today. These data are often inherently messy and sort of assumptions need to be made. So how do you go about making those and handling them in a real world data sense? Moving on to data visualization. So again, today we've seen some great data visualizations and statistical analysis. So introducing, and then at the end, kind of introducing some machine learning methods. So that's day one of the course, kind of taking you through each of these steps and kind of building your confidence. So the course was designed to provide this analytical foundation and framework to grow confidence in handling and analysing data that, like I say, can be built upon, adapted and referred back to by the attendee and to reflect their specific end data analysis needs. So this course is unique in the fact that we allow attendees to develop these skills before encourage them to directly apply them to real-world CDRC data projects or indeed their own data problem. So on the second day of training in the afternoon, we offered them the unique chance to practice and develop their skills in a setting that mimics real-world data analysis, but with the typical support available from a training course. So we were on hand to answer questions, talk to researchers, from industry and academia and third-party sectors about how they might use the skills they've learned to apply them to real-world settings, linking data sources, for example, things like that. So the course attendees came from a wide range of backgrounds, including industry, public sector, academia, and charity and third sector. So that allowed us to facilitate wide discussions around data analytical needs and sharing expertise between attendees, and allowing some really good networking experiences as well.
Thanks, Fran. So turning to your current role, so you post-PhD, you've joined us as a CDRC data scientist. So in light of the UK data strategy, there's ongoing conversations about the control of data and data security. So I wonder if you'd be able to share some thoughts about how our training and infrastructure contributes to that discussion.
Yes, so I think the CDRC training programme provides integral support to the UK data strategy across the 4 central pillars. So those of you not super familiar with the UK data strategy, it focuses on 4 pillars of data foundations, data skills, data availability, and data responsibility that ensure the best use of data in the UK. So the CDRC, as you've heard today, already plays an established role in data foundations and availability, holding data in a highly secure environment and making consumer data accessible to researchers across industry, academia, and third party. In my role as a data scientist, we not only provide research and analytical support across a wide range of CDRC projects, but also bridge that gap between those providing the data and those using the data, ensuring responsible data sharing. For example, day-to-day we liaise with industry and commercial partners as how to best integrate their data within the CDRC and looking at different research outputs and potential questions we can ask of these data. So alongside this more technical aspect, we also have responsibility to ensure those wanting to use the data do so responsibly and have the correct analytical skills they need to utilise these data. So as a collection of social scientists in the CDRC working across disciplines, so including disciplines such as medicine, health, social sciences, geography, transport, trying to think of some other people we've heard from today, crime, we are well placed to respond to the ethical challenges of data collection, analysis and dissemination. These are things that are currently perceived as weaknesses in the current data strategy, but we have the kind of skills to sort of tackle these challenges around ethical data collection and analysis, in particular dissemination. So coming back to the training, the core CDRC courses have now received CPD UK accreditation, certifying that we are can offer that as a continual professional development capacity. And we're also continuing conversation with our data partners at all stages of collaboration around the end data product needs and analytical needs to help identify gaps in industry and the public sector. Our training, therefore, is continually evolving to build capacity across data skills and responsible data use.
That's excellent. Thank you, Fran. I think your course, the Python course, is the technical skills course, but there is a kind of wide range of training that we're offering at the moment. I just had a quick look, and we've got a Tableau workshop, QGIS, which is mapping and data visualization, skills in R as well. So there's a range of courses on offer. So thanks very much for talking to us about those. So I'm going to turn to the whole panel now, and I've got the same question to ask all of you, if I may. So the question is, in brief, what's the one key benefit of bringing together the CDRC with external partners? So if I turn to Alex first and ask you that question.
Yeah, I'd say really the value of the collaborative and co-designed research as the strength and the nature of the CDRC partnerships and what I've experienced just really drive both insightful research and that real long-lasting impact.
Cool, thank you. Vicki, same question to you. So what are the benefits of bringing together the CDRC with external partners?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's about how we can maximise the value of data. So taking a single data set and aligning it to different purposes, but in a cohesive way, we can generate impacts for businesses, the research community, and ultimately society and public good as well.
Great, thanks, Vicki. Simon, same question to you. What do you think the key benefit?
I think bringing together the CDRC with external partners gives the ability to co-produce award-winning research with real-world policy impact at speed. And secondary to that, it also gives the opportunity for interns like myself and Alex to really work on impactful projects right at the start of their careers.
Great, thanks, Simon. And Fran, same question.
Well, for me, we're bringing together two pieces of the puzzle, sort of academia and industry, fitting those puzzle pieces together to ensure shared knowledge and sort of bilateral working, which isn't really available in other settings.
Yeah. Great, thank you all. So I hope that those 4 Q&A sessions have given you a feel for the kind of exciting array of different ways which CDRC partners with organisations to kind of build capacity across sectors and also to deliver results and impact. I've said it a couple of times, but if you want to know more about how you can engage with us, you've got an idea for a project, you need extra capacity brought to bear on a consumer data conundrum, we'd really like to hear from you. The best way to get in touch with us is generally through the central inbox, which is info@cdrc.ac.uk. Please do have a look at our website, cdrc.ac.uk, for further information on how you can partner with us. So we'll turn now to questions from the audience, which we've been collating as the panelists have been speaking. So let's have a look. So first question is from Michelle Morris, who is a colleague of ours here at Leeds. She says, great to see you all involved in such collaborative and impactful research and teaching so early in your careers. Can you how do you think the experience will influence your careers in the future? Okay, good. I think that's a question for everybody. Maybe if I take in order, Alex, would you like to have a go at that first? I muted Alex.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so for me, it's allowed me to work with such a variety of work across loads of really impactful projects already, and see the benefits and ways of working that do differ, even just in the ways that you have the data available and how the time that it takes working with both policymakers and with retailers and the benefits of each. And it's really allowed me to, and just through all of I've really enjoyed learning so many skills already within that time, and also working on those projects directly with them. It's sort of inspired me to actually pursue a PhD. So that's the route that I'm looking to, as there's just so much more that I'd like to learn within the sort of food sector, and something that actually it's really influences. I've found a real niche for myself of a real interest niche of sustainability and nutrition, and it's really helped develop my career already in that respect.
Thank you, Alex. Vicki?
Yeah, I think starting to work so collaboratively in the early career, I don't think I would go back now. Just probably seeking further collaboration is probably what I would take from this, and seeing the value of those collaborations to generate impact. So not just generating research outputs, but trying to translate those outputs into something that people can use outside of academia as well, and seeing those things having an effect in the real world. Yeah.
Thanks, Vicki. Simon?
I think it's somewhat hard to sum up how impactful it was for me, because working with, like I said, 3 other academics was a great way for me to get involved in the project to start with, but then being able to use the secure research service to have an understanding of tackling big data sets that are quite messy and highly sensitive, to work out how to make sure that you provide them in a secure manner, and then producing the reports in such a way in co-production, I think sort of summarizes exactly what Vicki was saying about the collaborative co-production approach, which I think moving forward through my career now will be something that I'll really try and stick to.
Thanks, Simon. And Fran, same question for you.
So I'd say it's been great to be involved. It's going to be the opportunity to be involved in so many different projects and work with so many different partners and sort of learn how different, as Alex, Vicki touched on, how many different people work. and moving forwards, kind of not just the technical skills, but sort of the building partnership skills and taking those forward, developing those and running with those would be the kind of thing that I think has influenced my career most. Also, in Michelle's question mentions teaching. So I've been lucky to have the opportunity to be involved in teaching, both academic and as part of the Python course, to kind of the third sector and different audiences. And I've really enjoyed that and sort of developed passion in teaching and be able to pass on and share those skills as well, which I think is highly important. If we want to kind of see these data make a real impact, is kind of spreading the skills and sharing those more widely.
Thank you, Fran. So question specifically for you, Vicki, which is from Sarah Muir. So she says, Vicki, you mentioned you already have experience in the food industry, which has helped you to build collaborations with industry. Do you have any advice for researchers without this pre-existing experience or connections for how to build these links?
Yeah, so I suppose it definitely helped me, but I don't think it's totally essential that you have to have that industry experience. I think, firstly, willingness to get involved in a collaborative project. I think there's maybe some hesitance in academia around industry collaboration, especially with the food industry. So just being willing to get involved and listen to what the other party in that collaboration has to say. There's a lot that you can learn from the other side of the partnership as well. So always staying open to learn about their perspective, I think will help to build that trust and that collaboration.
Great, thank you. So question from Kylie. So Kylie would like to know what's the potential for reproducing the food carbon calculator? Are there any plans currently with other partners or with different data?
Yeah, so with the carbon footprint calculator, within the actual project itself, we've looked at school meals, and there's a lot of appetite around the project across the council to look at other food venues that they offer and sort of evaluate it in that setting. However, additionally, of course, lots of organisations are having to look at the carbon emissions from their food. So actually, just from presenting about this project and demonstrating the tool in different settings, we've had people reach out to us from many different organisations across Leeds as well, and actually including the university's own sustainability team. And what's actually quite pleasing is at the minute we're in discussions just sort of where knowledge from what we're working on can be sort of lead the way to also set up another LIDA internship potentially, which is quite exciting as a LIDA intern myself, because again, looking at what I've been working on, it would be working with a very different data set, and again, in each food setting, it's a very different way that knowledge can be used, whether it's, flagging low carbon meals, or if it's looking at the procurement side, or if it's just sort of setting out recommendations for how the choices that are being made and the ways to potentially minimize the carbon footprint. But again, it's quite pleasing because that's something that, although similar, it would be very different again as a project in itself. And I imagine as an intern, seeing it, it would be something that I would have been interested in as well. So that's quite exciting for pieces ahead.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. We've got a question from Bruce Jackson at ESRC. It looks like it's a question in two parts, so I think I'll break it down. So the first part of the question is, how important do you think investments such as CDRC are in terms of helping early career researchers access closed proprietary data not collected for the primary purposes of research? So he asks, would you be able to do this work as an ECR without the support of the CDRC? So, okay, I'll give you a second to think about that. So we'll take it all the way up to the first question mark. And if I go in the same order, actually, no, Alex, I'll give you a rest. I'll go to Fran, if I may.
Yeah, so I think I'm potentially well placed to answer this question. So my PhD project used the CDRC smartphone app data that I previously mentioned. This is my PhD was the first project looking at using these data in a secondary capacity to look at public health behaviour. So at an individual level, so you may have seen kind of publications or kind of headlines about Strava. They're kind of looking at wider patterns of behaviour, particularly that one where they managed to identify that military base. So an example of bad data practice. But at the individual level, this was the first project to actually look at these data and identify patterns of behaviour. So we're able to kind of cluster individuals into unique patterns of behaviour across the week and the year, which would be vital if we wanted to then target policy. I think the CDRC, it was vital in this. First of all, kind of gaining access to this data and having that kind of history of trust and relationship building, which then makes it a lot easier to onboard new data partnerships, and sort of that knowledge is already there within the organisation.
Yeah, that's great, Fran. Thank you for that. I just wonder if I could invite anyone else who might have a thought on that first part of the question. Are there any further comments from the panel?
If I may, just picking up on what Fran said about the history of trust, and it does take a little while to build that trust between organisations and to get to a point where data is being shared between the organisations. So I think that there needs to be that investment and the infrastructure around sharing the data. PhD projects are typically 3 or 4 years, so it doesn't give you enough time to develop that history of trust and get to the point where you've got data to use. You kind of need it earlier than that, and so you can hit the ground running. So I think having the kind of the foresight to see what's needed in terms of investing in the infrastructure and how that data will be shared to build that trust has really helped early career researchers to get the data they need and actually start work on their projects. Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good point, Vicki. I think it's also probably fair to say that a lot of these data that are proprietary, not collected for the specific purpose which they're used for necessarily, do require a lot of thought and cleaning as well. So I think having infrastructure isn't just the environment, is people as well. So having kind of experienced people who know how to deal with these kinds of data is invaluable. And those collaborations between early career and slightly later career researchers, I think, is a big advantage as well. If I could just turn to the second part of Bruce's question. So he says, secondly, what are the skills you've developed that would be valuable to your partners and future employers moving forwards? Simon, I'm going to maybe ask you, because you have moved into industry. So do you think you might be able to have a go at that bit of the question?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. So in terms of skills developed from the project, like I said, a lot of coding skills were improved as there was no access to the internet or external resources within this secure service, which I think was a big plus, to be able to go to my interviews and say, I have this real world example of work that I've done, which I wrote the code myself. You can look at it, it's open source. I think having that kind of openly available publication for myself to be able to show to employers was a good way to sort of market yourself. That I think was a really important part of the project for me. But then there's a range of soft skills that I think are often not necessarily talked about, but with working with the local authorities, there was quite a range of understanding of data. So some local authorities already had access to the secure research service themselves, and were really just looking for us to maybe provide them code or analysis on top of what they were already working on. Whereas there was others who were really unsure what they wanted, unsure how to interpret what we provided. So I think being able to speak to a range of people about the data you've produced in the research is a really important thing, and also is inevitably valuable when you're working at an employer to be able to describe the research you've done within the private sector.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just building on elements of what everyone said, but definitely with accessing the data and having access to all of that, it's definitely, like you've mentioned, the environment around it that really was so supportive in that and helped develop all the skills that we now have, like the coding ones that Simon's mentioned, and then also those soft skills too. And the going forwards, I think something that is quite valuable, like Simon mentioned, is that just sort of being able to communicate research, and yeah, bridge that gap between just sort of having the research and the actual shaping society around us. Definitely something really helpful.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's turn to another question from the audience then. So this is a question in from Emily Ennis at University of Leeds. So she says that the panel has mentioned the shared opportunities and outcomes for partnership engagement, but what does the typical output of a project look like? That's a good question. So she says, is it always a journal article or something else? So it's very much focused on the outcomes of projects. You know, what kind of things come out of the other end of a successful partnership project. So does anyone want to take the lead on this? I can kick off if you like, actually. So I mean, broadly speaking, when we engage in these projects and want to put something together, as academics, we love to produce the academic journal article because it's where the science goes and they get peer reviewed, and that has considerable kudos in the sense of being kind of a quality output. But also the range of dissemination is quite broad. So it's everything from blog posts, which get the message across in a nice pithy way, all the way through to kind of reports, which are detailed for a partner so that they get a good understanding about their processes or data or anything else. And there's a whole range of things in between. So rather than me going through them all, I wonder if anyone wants to talk from experience about projects that they've actually been involved in.
I'm happy to talk about it a little bit about actually what you said about having a range of outputs is something that across the two projects that I've worked on with CDRC is really true, because we're looking to have sort of a paper article at the end of both projects that I've worked on. Anyway, just sort of to really have that methodology all documented, but then also we've put out blog posts sort of at interim points as well to sort of generate engagement around the project and then communicate results too. Then sort of the aside from sort of blog posts and those sort of paper outputs, there are other ones which sort of feed into and come out of naturally the type of projects that I've worked on. So when working with IGD, our analysis fed into a report, a behaviour insights report that they put out, which as part of their Healthy Sustainable Diets group, this is what the analysis was sort of all part of. So we've managed to release our analysis in quite again, a retail audience, which is different to just the academic audience. And then in our current project, our output essentially would be having this tool that we're passing over to Leeds City Council and the different departments that it will be useful to there, which is kind of a novel kind of output, which isn't like a usual one. But again, it's what I enjoy about these projects is that alongside just blog posts and sort of that paper, we have additional ones that are sort of in line with the project in particular and its requirements and help to fill the aims that it depending on each one.
Yeah, there's a kind of dashboard and derived data outputs view of this as well. So I mean, certainly in other projects, I'm happy to mention one of the derived outputs that we have deposited on CDRC is a vulnerability metric score that we worked on as part of a previous internship with one of our partners. So we were looking at trying to classify areas by their consumer vulnerability, so how vulnerable they were to marketing practices. So I think that's a really important set of outcomes as well. It's saying, now that we've done this analysis, how can we create a data product or derived output which is of use to other people? I don't know if others on the panel want to share experiences of the kind of outcomes of their projects.
I can come in on this and sort of just mention policy briefs as well. So in my work, I took the findings from 2 academic research papers and actually translated them into a policy brief, which allowed me to kind of communicate that research to a different audience and that actually had the result of striking up another collaborative partnership that we weren't currently engaged with. So that's another example. Alex mentioned earlier about translating research for different audiences. So that's one way in which you can do it and be fairly strategic around getting the message to the right audience.
Quite often too, working with the data on the internships, and at first when working with sort of new data sets, it's quite often the short projects help to guide sort of further research that could come out of them as well, which is, I guess, sort of a further long-term impact there. And that's definitely true with the IGD work, as again, it was sort of what we're offering is, well, it's true with the Leeds Council one, where it's sort of going to filter through to hopefully another internship project. And then also with the IGD work, looking at healthy and sustainable diets, the trial that we were analysing was just sort of one part of a whole project, and sort of looking to offer insights and strategies out there to sort of documenting what maybe doesn't work anyway, as part of a greater effort to sort of shift behaviours.
We do appear to have lost Nick temporarily, but I can see that another question has come in. So this one's from Ollie Mansell from CDRC, and it's for Simon. So he says, you collaborated with senior colleagues and researchers from CDRC ULO, which is UCL, Liverpool and Oxford, on local data spaces. What was it like building those relationships quickly during such a short-term reactive project?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, actually, because at the time we were doing it as well, it was during remote working situation. So there wasn't really a scenario in which we could meet face to face to kind of build the relationships that way. And especially working in the secure research service, you are in a room by yourself with no sort of external contact. So it's important to build those relationships prior to sort of getting into the research. But I think the fact that we had so many meetings with local authorities themselves, like I said, those 25 pilot local authorities, I think that was a really good way of us getting to understand each other's research experiences and what each other could help with, particularly from my point of view, what I could get help from each of the other researchers from. And then we just had to sort of a case of meeting virtually as much as possible to strengthen those relationships, because like you say, the better the relationship, I think the more fruitful the outcome can be.
You mentioned working in safe rooms as well, Simon. I also have experience of working in safe rooms, and while they're extremely good for protecting the data, they do have their difficulties as well. And I think I definitely found that my coding skills improved a lot, because they have to in that kind of environment. You definitely, just have to dig in. Yeah.
Hello, folks. I'm back. Apologies for dropping out there, but it looked like you were holding the fort admirably. I wonder if there are any further questions from the audience. We're doing well on time, I think. So I suppose before we wrap up, quick opportunity to say anything that you think you might have missed, panel, anything burning that you would like to add. But if not, then we can wrap up. So just remains for me to say then, thank you ever so much to our panel. So thanks to Alex Dalton, Vicki Jenneson, to Fran Pontin, and to Simon Leech for your time and your insight. This is the kind of call to engagement. If people would like to engage further with us in CDRC, we would really love to hear from you. I really hope that after that session, you've gotten a feel for the kind of ways in which we can work with our data partners. As I've said before, probably the best way of getting in touch with us is via info@cdrc.ac.uk with inquiries. Please do look at our website. The speakers' email addresses are available on the full agenda of the conference from today. So if you'd like to get in touch with anyone directly, including myself, then we would be very pleased to hear from you. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much to our audience for your time and engagement today. It's been really great to be able to share some of our research with you, and we very much look forward to hearing from you soon. And then a final thank you to the team who have supported us in putting this conference together and keeping the show running. So thanks very much and goodbye.